Hey fight fans from around the world, prepare to witness a jaw-dropping journey through the annals of combat sports history. Since its inception in 1993, the Ultimate Fighting Championship has been a crucible of unparalleled athleticism and raw power. Every year, warriors step into the octagon, their eyes locked on victory, their fists primed to deliver the ultimate knockout blow. In this exclusive journey, we'll relive those unforgettable moments, revisiting the breathtaking knockouts that have left us breathless year after year. 1993, Gerard Gordeau vs. Taylor Tooley. In UFC 1, Gerard Gordon made a shocking statement with a powerful head kick that knocked out Taylor Tooley. The violence of that moment set the stage for the unpredictable world of mixed martial arts. Witness the tooth-launching knockout that started it all, reminding us of the raw and unguarded nature of the 1990s. 1994, Patrick Smith vs. Scott Morris. Smith's relentless assault on Morris showcased the need for change. The fight's brutal nature led to the implementation of TKO rules and the recognition of intelligent defense. This marked a crucial turning point in the evolution of mixed martial arts, shaping the sport we know today. 1995, Paul Verhoeven's vs. Cal Worsham. In this classic UFC fight, Paul Verhoeven used a 12-6 elbow to knock out Cal Worsham. This technique is now illegal in MMA, but it was still legal at the time of this fight. Verhoeven's elbow came down like a hammer, and Worsham was out cold immediately. The referee stepped in quickly to stop the fight, and Verhoeven had a stunning victory. 1996, Gary Goodridge vs. Paul Herrera. Goodridge, realizing an opening, trapped Herrera in a crucifix position. What followed was a relentless flurry of elbows, leaving a lasting mark in the history books. This brutal finish exemplified the raw power and intensity that defined the early era of the sport. 1997, Mark Kerr vs. Greg Stott. With sheer physicality and power, Kerr delivered a massive blow that sent Stott crashing to the canvas. This knockout was straightforward, effective, and completely legal. Marvel at the remarkable display of skill from this renowned wrestler, showcasing the simplicity and effectiveness of his technique. 1998, Pete Williams vs. Mark Coleman. In this classic UFC fight, Pete Williams knocked out Mark Coleman with a thunderous head kick. This was one of the most shocking knockouts in UFC history, as Coleman was the reigning heavyweight champion at the time. Williams' kick was so powerful that it sent Coleman's head flying back, and he was out cold before he even hit the ground. This fight is a reminder that even the biggest and strongest fighters can be knocked out with one well-placed shot. 1999, Brad Kohler vs. Steve Judson. Although Brad Kohler may not be a household name in MMA, his victory in the UFC deserves recognition. To shine as a world beater on such a grand stage for a single night is an accomplishment few fighters experience. Let's give credit where it's due. Kudos to you, Kohler, for leaving a lasting mark in the sport and achieving what many can only dream of. 2000, Jens Pulver vs. John Lewis. This was one of the quickest knockouts in UFC history, in which Jens Pulver knocked out John Lewis in just 11 seconds, and it set Pulver up for a shot at the inaugural lightweight belt. Pulver went on to win the belt, becoming the first ever 155-pound champion. Pulver's left hook was perfectly timed and executed, and it sent Lewis to the canvas with a thud. 2001, Matt Hughes vs. Carlos Newton. This was one of the most unique knockouts in UFC history, as both fighters were knocked out in the process. Hughes was able to lift Newton up and slam him to the ground, but he also hit his head on the canvas and was briefly knocked out himself. This fight is a reminder that even the most experienced fighters can be caught off guard and knocked out. 2002, Robbie Lawler vs. Tiki Goshen. It was a classic fight that showed the intensity and ferocity of Lawler's fighting style. Lawler was tagged during an exchange, but he unleashed an inner fury and knocked Goshen out with a combination of punches and a follow-up shot on the mat. This fight is a reminder that Lawler is a true warrior who will never give up, even when he's facing adversity. 2003, Vitor Belfort vs. Marvin Eastman. Vitor Belfort is a Brazilian MMA legend, and this vintage knockout against Marvin Eastman is a perfect example of his power and finishing ability. Belfort caught Eastman with a pair of solid knees, and then unloaded a huge barrage of follow-up shots to seal the deal. This fight is a must-see for any fan of MMA violence. 2004, Yves Edwards vs. Josh Thompson. One of the most unique knockouts in MMA history came in a bout between Yves Edwards and Josh Thompson in 2004. Edwards used his opponent's momentum against him, pushing him away to create space, and then landing a devastating head kick. The knockout was so impressive that it is still talked about today, and it remains one of Edwards' finest moments in his career. 2005, Rich Franklin vs. Nate Quarry. In this classic UFC fight, Rich Franklin knocked out Nate Quarry with a devastating left hook. The knockout was so powerful that Quarry's arm extended, and he went stiff as a board. This fight is a reminder that even the toughest fighters can be knocked out with one well-placed shot. 2006, Scott Smith vs. Pete Sell. The two fighters exchanged bombs throughout the fight, and in the end, it was Smith who came out on top with one of the most incredible knockouts in UFC history. Sell landed a huge body shot that had Smith reeling, but Smith refused to go down. He gathered himself and landed a massive right hand that sent Sell crashing to the canvas. The knockout was so powerful that Smith himself collapsed to the ground after the fight was called. 2007, Gabriel Gonzaga vs. Mirko Cro Cop. This was one of the most unexpected knockouts in UFC history, as Cro Cop was the reigning heavyweight champion at the time. Gonzaga's kick was so powerful that it sent Cro Cop's head flying back, and he was out cold before he even hit the ground. 2008, Rashad Evans vs. Chuck Liddell. Liddell was the reigning light heavyweight champion at the time. Evans' timing was perfect, and the punch landed flush on Liddell's chin, sending him crashing to the canvas. This fight was a turning point in Evans' career, as it earned him a title shot against Forrest Griffin. Evans went on to win the fight and become the new light heavyweight champion. 2009, Dan Henderson vs. Michael Bisping. This fight was a grudge match between two fighters who had been trash-talking each other for months. Henderson had been a guest coach on The Ultimate Fighter, and he had gotten sick of Bisping's constant talking. He vowed to shut Bisping up, and he did just that with one punch. The knockout was so impressive that it earned Henderson a title shot against Anderson Silva. 2010, Carlos Condit vs. Dan Hardy. Carlos Condit's knockout of Dan Hardy at UFC 120 is one of my personal favorites. The two fighters landed blows at pretty much the same time, but Condit's shot landed flush on Hardy's chin, sending him to the canvas. Condit then followed up with a concussive blow that put an end to Hardy's night. 2011, Lyoto Machida vs. Randy Couture. Lyoto Machida's knockout of Randy Couture with a crane kick is one of the most iconic moments in MMA history. The kick was so perfectly executed, and it came out of nowhere. Couture was caught completely off guard, and he was sent crashing to the canvas. 2012, Edson Barbosa vs. Terry Etam. Edson Barbosa's spinning wheel kick knockout of Terry Etam is another iconic moment in UFC history. The setup, the execution, and the clean connection were all perfect. Barbosa already had a reputation as one of the greatest knockout artists in the sport, but this knockout might be his masterpiece. 2013, Chris Weidman vs. Anderson Silva. Weidman caught Silva with a devastating left hook, sending him crashing to the canvas. The knockout was so impressive that it ended Silva's legendary 16-fight win streak. This fight was a huge upset, as Silva was the reigning middleweight champion at the time. 2014, Dong Hyun Kim vs. John Hathaway. Dong Hyun Kim's spinning elbow landed with such perfect precision that it sent Hathaway crashing to the canvas. This knockout is a testament to Kim's skill and timing, and it is sure to be talked about for years to come. 2015, Holly Holm vs. Ronda Rousey. Holm caught Rousey with a perfectly timed head kick, sending her crashing to the canvas. The knockout was so impressive that it ended Rousey's legendary 12-fight win streak. This fight was a huge upset, as Rousey was the reigning UFC bantamweight champion at the time. 2016, Donald Cerrone vs. Rick Story. Donald Cerrone's 4-punch knockout of Rick Story is one of my all-time favorite finishing sequences. The way he mixed up punches to the head and the body before finishing with a kick was a thing of beauty. The victory came during Cerrone's 170-pound resurgence, and it showed that he was a force to be reckoned with in the division. 2017, Francis Ngannou vs. Alistair Overeem. The punch was so powerful that it nearly took Overeem's head off. Overeem was unconscious for quite some time afterward, and Ngannou's reputation as the sport's biggest power puncher was set in stone. 2018, Yair Rodriguez vs. Chan Sung Jun. The knockout was so unexpected and so spectacular that it took a few replays for it to sink in. Rodriguez landed a reverse upward elbow from a ducking position, and it sent Jung crashing to the canvas. 2019, Jorge Masvidal vs. Ben Askren. The knockout was so fast and so brutal that it was hard to believe what had just happened. Masvidal landed a flying knee to Askren's head, and Askren was knocked out cold even before he hit the ground. 2020, Joaquin Buckley vs. Impa Kasanganay. This knockout was truly a work of art that is sure to be talked about for years to come. Buckley landed a jumping back kick to Kasanganay's head, and it sent Kasanganay crashing to the canvas. 2021, Ignacio Bahamondes vs. Roosevelt Roberts. There's just something about a late knockout that really does it for me, and Ignacio Bahamondes' spinning wheel kick knockout of Roosevelt Roberts is one of the cleanest and most impressive knockouts I've ever seen. Bahamondes was just 24 years old when he pulled off this incredible knockout, and it's a sign of the great things that are to come from this young prospect. 2022, Kamaru Usman vs. Leon Edwards. In the UFC 286 main event, Kamaru Usman was knocked out by Leon Edwards with a head kick in the 5th round. It was a stunning finish to a closely contested fight, and it capped off a remarkable comeback for Edwards, who had been out of action for over 2 years. And finally, in 2023, in the UFC 287 co-main event, Rob Font knocked out with a spinning back fist in the 1st round. It was a stunning finish to a highly anticipated fight, and it showed that Font is one of the most dangerous strikers in the UFC bantamweight division. Thank you for joining us on this exhilarating journey through the best UFC knockouts from every year since 1993. From historic moments to brutal finishes, these knockouts have defined the sport. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more thrilling UFC content.